Hello, hello, hello. Everybody can hear me today because we did sound check earlier. That's how that goes. I have two people with me this evening. Sleuth Mom. Everybody knows Sleuth Mom. How's Sleuth Mom doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, doing good. I'm super stoked to get this information out, and I hope that anybody who's following East Palestine and is keeping up with us, I hope that they hear all of this. I also have my brother. He goes by Lefty, not right. He is a locomotive engineer. We've worked many trains together, many times, many days. So I have him here with me this evening because some of the information may be a little more difficult for me to explain. And he's a definite pro at it. He's got several years on me. So how's Lefty this evening?
He is fine.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
He's sitting in a dormitory waiting for a train to come back. And
Yep.
Like always, right?
Always waiting.
Right. I know that's how that goes. Hey, butterfly kisses in the bushes. I see you here. Lee Marie in the house. Hope everybody's doing good. We're gonna get right to it this evening, though, because there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff to share. There's a lot of outrage and anger, and I hope that everybody who lives in or around the area gets the information and contacts one of us to get some legal information to go from there because an ass has been an asshole. Hey, Freeside, how are you? So let's start off with I put this little video together earlier to give some context to why we're in this situation. So, Lefty, what can you tell us? How do you think precision scheduled railroading has led to derailments and East Palestine specifically?
Well, with the precision scheduled railroad, everything gets cut as far as manpower in every craft on the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
They've made the trains twice as big.
Mm-hmm.
When they're twice as big, they're harder to run, and none of us is used to running these big trains, so they just throw them at you. Then now you throw DP into it, which DP is engines they can put in the middle of the train or at the rear, and
Yep, distributed power.
And we have to control them, and they just everything else was thrown at us. No
What did you think
training.
about the training for that distributed power when they went live with that? When they said, hey, we're going to run 15,000 foot trains and we're going to throw some distributed power, a couple of back to back locomotives right smack dab in the middle. How did you feel as an engineer every day? How did you feel about the training that you got with linking up to those locomotives, fencing and unfencing, and being able to safely or confidently get the freight across the road?
Well, we was still nervous, because we really didn't have a lot of training. It was just thrown at us, and hey, let's see what happens. Just
Right.
trial by error.
Right. So what I try to tell people, and I've been saying this since the beginning of the, I know I told Sleuth Mom about this since the beginning, since the day that this derailment happened, the first time I heard about it and I went live about it. I was in shock, but I was more angry because I said, this is what we, the employees, the engineers, the conductors, the car knockers, the pit crew, this is what we have been screaming about for the last several years since precision scheduled railroading became anything at all. We've been screaming about that. We've been saying, you're taking safety from number one and putting it dead last. This is going to happen. We've been saying that. Making ineffectively what's happened is Lefty gets called to work. And where before he would take a 6,000 or a 7,000 foot train, now he's taking a 15,000 foot train. Instead of having two locomotives or three locomotives to pull with power, now he's got two or three on the head end and a couple in the middle. So he's operating 5 locomotives and 2 trains because you have 2 trains combined together as one, and you have to operate those as one giant train. So much weight, so much length going up and down all over, the geography of the rail, up and down the hills, around the corners, all of those things. and still not getting the rest at home. You get 10 hours off, and then you get called right back to work. They only have to give you 10 hours off. That's it. No paid sick time. Can't get approved days off. They're exhausted. It's hell. So precision scheduled railroading cuts your crews in half, lays off half of your workforce, doubles the size of your trains, and you still have to operate like that. It's insane. I've got some videos to show you that gives a lot more context for how it affects you in your cities and your areas. But I started with, let's start with this one. I made this little intro video
before you start there. So just let you know, they have said, they have changed their ways or whatever. All the railroads have. They're not calling it precision scheduling railroad, but it's still the same thing. They're just trying to keep the government off their back pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm glad you said that because I forgot about that.
It just seems so crazy to me that they are doing this as a learn as you F up type of process. And it's literally people's lives, people's neighborhoods, and these disasters that keep happening.
Yeah, I think I ended up having my DP training. It was a year and a little bit after they implemented it, running distributed power.
Right.
That's great.
At the same time that they're going live with positive train control, which is basically you explain that one. You explain positive train control.
PTC, positive train control. It's where you have a screen in front of you that shows the signals on the tracks, and it's predicting how far your distance is to stop at a stop signal or at an approach or at a crossing. You have to stop and flag or protect. So it's taking all this information, the algorithms, to see if you're going too fast. And if you are, it'll set you up, put your train in penalty. And it's basically try to keep you from running a stop signal. But regardless, if you're going too fast, it will set you up, but you can still run it. But it's tries to prevent you from doing that. Then you add on trip optimizer and energy management, where the train tries to run itself, and it's all programmed in. And sometimes it can't handle it, and it throws it right back on your lap at the last second. And then the engineer, and you have to predict if you're going to be going too fast. So you have to take over before that happens if the system can't handle running the train by itself.
Exactly. So it's taken engineers, locomotive engineers who have been running trains the same size, the same length, on the same territory for years, for decades. And it's taken the control of operating, or what we call running the locomotive, running the train over the same territory, and it's given it to a computer system that's managed by a dispatcher and analysts that are sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, watching the computers. They have the ability to override anything that the engineer does, to basically take control from the engineer, put the train in emergency. They don't know the roads that we stop at in order to not cut your town in half, in order to allow your emergency vehicles to get through town whenever they need to, or your school buses to get there on time. They don't know where the hills stop and where they start. I mean, some of these guys are going in and out of coal mines still. They're going up and down, the mountains. These computer systems aren't designed to function the way that a human being has been functioning for decades. And precision scheduled railroading has a lot to do with what's been going on. It started back Hunter Harrison with CSX. I'm not going to say God rest his soul. I hope he's burning in hell, because this is all his idea. But Hunter Harrison started this and made a ton of money off of it. And this video here is going to show you a little bit of how the first thing that they do is cut jobs.
We already know that Norfolk Southern plans to leave Hampton Roads, relocating its headquarters to Atlanta. Well, now we know the company also plans to cut thousands of jobs. That information was released during an investors meeting today. Norfolk Southern plans to cut 3,000 employees and 500 locomotives by 2021.
More than 100 people are out of a job tonight.
Norfolk Southern is furloughing 130 workers, about 80 at its Schaefer's Crossing location and about 50 at the East End. Now, this comes as the company also reportedly laid off 100 employees today at a location in Pennsylvania.
10 News reporter Tommy Lopez has reaction from workers in Roanoke.
Dozens of families in Roanoke are getting the terrible news today. Furloughs for 130 Norfolk Southern repair workers.
It never gets any easier going home and telling your family that you're laid off.
Workers and union leaders believe the company won't be asking them to come back. You can see the stockpiled locomotives here not in use. Union leaders say this year the company has sold or scrapped hundreds of them. Norfolk Southern says that it needs fewer locomotive repair workers because there are now fewer trains here in Roanoke. But as local delegate Sam Rasul points out, this comes as the company is doing well financially.
It's very unfortunate that once again Norfolk Southern has really punched us in the gut.
This comes after the company laid off more than 40 workers in April. A spokesperson says it now has just over 900 employees in the Roanoke Valley.
It's the second round of layoffs this year at the Altoona shop.
Very disappointing, but not necessarily surprising.
Less than 4 months after 50 employees were laid off at the Juniata locomotive shop, Norfolk Southern told 100 other workers they were without a job. In a statement to WTAJ, Norfolk Southern writes in part, quote, Norfolk Southern continues to focus on ensuring that we have the optimal number of people and assets at every location across our system in order to operate safely and efficiently. They continue on to say, as we execute our strategic plan, we expect that targeted hiring and furloughing will remain components of our operating model.
Southern was back on Capitol Hill today facing questions about railroad safety. And this comes more than 6 weeks after his company's train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, sending toxins in the air.
I am determined to make this right. Norfolk Southern continues to make good on its promise to clean the site safely, thoroughly, and with urgency. You have my personal commitment that we will get the job done and we will help these communities thrive.
There are various pieces of legislation making its way through the House and Senate right now as it relates to reforming rail safety. And at this point, Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw has yet to endorse those plans in totality. But Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown told me something will eventually pass with or without Norfolk Southern's support.
It's the same old story. Corporations do stock buybacks. They do big dividend checks. They lay off workers. Goes on to say these things are happening because the railroads are simply not investing the way they should in car safety and the rail lines themselves.
Well, as I noted, we invest over $1 billion a year in our safety program in the form of maintenance, in the form of equipment, in the form of technology. There's more to be done, as you can imagine. Since this occurred, every single day, I've asked myself, what could we have done better? What could we have done to prevent this? And, Morgan, it's pretty clear that our safety culture and our investments in safety didn't prevent this accident.
The meeting of the Select Committee on Rail Safety will now come to order.
My name is Alan Shaw, and I've been president and CEO of Norfolk Southern since May of 2022. I want to begin today by expressing how deeply sorry I am for the impact the derailment in East Palestine has had on the people in the area and how deeply committed I am to making this right. It's a traumatic event, despite the fact there was no loss of life. We are a safe railroad. Norfolk Southern is a safe railroad.
Let's just get real here. Whose responsibility was it to prevent this preventable accident from happening?
Senator, we are responsible for safety on our network and working within the entire industry to enhance safety.
Okay, let me understand this. You just reluctantly acknowledged, A, it's preventable, and B, it was your responsibility to prevent it. Am I incorrect?
Senator, I'm taking responsibility to enhance safety throughout the entire industry.
Okay, this sounds like a lobbyist response. I'm taking responsibility. It's like before executives come in here, they go to charm school.
Just want to pause here and say Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw, appointed in December of 2021, has a tenure of 1.5 years. That's 1.5 years. Total yearly compensation is $9.77 million, 9.2% salary, 90.8% bonuses, including company stocks and options. He directly owns 0.014% of the company's shares.
%90 of that is bonuses.
Leslie
Come on.
Run, and there's
Yes,
dead
ma'am.
worms and dead fish all throughout this water. So, something I just discovered is that if you scrape the creek bed, it's like chemical is coming out of the ground. Can you come here and let me just show this to people. I don't know if you're going to see this in the camera, but watch this. Just see that chemical.
Norfolk Southern boosted shareholder payouts 4,500%, slashed workforce 33% prior to the Ohio disaster. In fine print, it says they cut their workforce to bare bones, and now they're paying the price for it because the wheels are falling off the trains. Hey, Earth.
Police and fire. Yes, I'm calling from over on Alice Street. I was outside and the train was making a really bad noise, and there was a huge burst of flames up. It would have been on Taggart Street, going up to where the McKim's Winery is.
Okay, what's where McKim's Winery is?
Fire. Yeah, it's somewhere in that vicinity because I was at 533 Alice. And so it was closer down to like Pleasant, but on Taggart.
All right. Your past Howard. Where is it at? Ram 5 on East Taggart. The old food tech building.
All right, we'll get some people down there.
3087.
All right, thank you.
All right. All right, we'll get somebody out there. Okay,
I'm on the corner. Is there a train on fire?
No,
I don't know if it was a train, but it's like a huge explosive thing fire in the air.
Main Street. Something just exploded.
Yeah, we're getting calls on it right now. We have officers out en route.
Okay. I saw a battle fire out my window and the smoke billowing. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, is it about the train?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep, we have officers on the route.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, bye. Ma'am? Hello?
The fact that these chemicals are still seeping in the ground is an insult to the people who live in East Palestine. Do not forget these people. We've got to keep applying pressure. That's how we're going to fix this problem.
D had a good comment up here. Let me go back up to it. DB says, let's summarize. So you double the weight of trains, essentially combining two trains into one, throw in a computer to say you modernized, and lay off half the staff while cutting benefits. Absolutely. That is precision scheduled railroading. 100%. That is precision scheduled railroading in a nutshell. And people die from it. I mean, East Palestine is definitely suffering right now. And we have some legislatures that have been fighting against this for quite some time. Unfortunately, their voices weren't heard, or other government agencies weren't saying, "Hey, we support you. We want to help you. We want to do this. We want to do that." It's all about money and corporate greed. This video comes from December 8th, 2020. And It's pretty eye-opening.
lines,
They're talking about precision scheduled railroading.
the industry would not be the success it is today. Historically, in return, the railroads that provide good-paying jobs with good benefits for their workers. It's important that this continues. Today, we'll hear from a number of witnesses about the widespread changes that are taking place in the railroad industry and the impacts that these changes are having on the rail workforce. Two of the significant changes we have seen recently are longer trains and the adoption of precision scheduled railroading, or PSR. These changes in rail operations have raised concerns about working conditions and safety, as well as negative community impacts and the quality of service being provided. Freight railroads are now running consistently longer trains, upwards of 10,000 to 15,000 feet. That equates to 2 or 3 mile long trains, or to put it another way, 33 football fields. However, the rail infrastructure has largely gone unchanged. This has led to operational challenges such as increased block crossings or idling on mainline tracks for extended periods of time.
Before he stepped down as executive chairman of BNSF, Matt Rose gave an interview with Railway Age, which I would recommend that anyone interested in the future of the industry read. And when he was asked about the value proposition of his railroad, Rose noted he looked at the value of the railroad as a three-legged stool. One leg being shareholders, because they provide the capital needed for reinvestment in the railroad. Second, employees, which provide the services that allow us to make the return to provide to shareholders. And the third leg of the stool is customers. Unfortunately, thanks to Hunter Harrison and his destructive actions at CSX, we seem to be entering into a new era of railroading where railroads think only less is better. And the three-legged stool is now down to kind of a peg leg. And this is not long-term sustainable or supportable. I worry that the railroads are cementing in his legacy, squeezing out more and more profits for shareholders or, the rapacious Wall Street hedge funds at the expense of long-term investments back into the rail network. Across nearly all the Class 1 railroads, we're seeing a reduction of capital, maintenance investments, labor costs, and service, all for the sake of reaching lower and lower operating ratios. He called it precision scheduled railroading, but what are the consequences to hedge fund investors bringing out every possible dime from these railroads? Shippers, we're hearing more and more, and we will hold a next hearing, I believe, of this subcommittee with shippers to hear of their frustrations. It's not more precisely scheduled for them. It's costing them time and money. Just last month, the STB held a hearing to examine Class 1 railroads' increased use of demurrage and accessorial charges to shippers. The hearing brought to light concerns that service has not improved for shippers with the implementation of PSR, but in fact, they're often having to bear the financial burden of these operational changes to profit the people on Wall Street. And then we look at the consequences for the workforce. Thousands of freight railroad workers have lost their jobs. In just 3 years, CSX has cut its workforce from 26,000 down to less than 20,000. Since May 2018, UP has reduced its workforce by 3,000. These aren't just executive or administrative jobs. Their jobs are represented by some of the witnesses sitting before us in the next panel today. Engineers, conductors, yardmasters, signalmen. Signalmen now are required to, at UP, instead of 20 miles of track, 60 miles of track, which for many is a physical impossibility. Switch, bridge repair, maintenance workers, car and locomotive maintenance workers. These are jobs that help ensure a railroad can expand its service and continue to operate safely. On the passenger side, Amtrak's cutting jobs too, not because it's beholden to hedge fund investors, but because of this notion that someday it will have an operating profit. To the administrator, how long can a train be? I have trains now running up to.
Okay, so I want you to pay attention to this part right here. He's asking the former FRA administrator, the Federal Railroad Administration administrator, director, jackass. He's asking him, how long can a train be? And listen to this guy's answer. And then I'm going to show you one example of how Class 1 railroads are skirting away from what they're supposed to be doing.
Willamette Valley that are 15,000 feet long, going through city centers. How long are we going to allow people to block emergency vehicles? These are mostly at-grade crossings. I mean, is there any limit to how long they can make these trains?
There is no limit as far as what you can make a train regulatory. There is no limit that I'm aware of in timetables of railroads. However, railroads are very cognizant of what the physical plant will accommodate and what will be accommodated safely in its transversing of the route between points A and B.
Right, but what about, the rest of the country, the people who live in these cities, who need to get back and forth across the track, emergency vehicles are blocked, there's a hospital on the other side. I mean, you can run, don't you think there should be a practical limit on the length of trains that both serves the railroads for efficiency, but not their optimal PSR or whatever the hell you want to call it efficiency, but also is cognizant of the burdens placed on the rest of the people of the United States of America?
Chairman DeFazio, ordinarily it's not unusual to see trains operate with
15,000 feet long? I haven't heard of that before recently.
You'll see trains ordinarily in the range of 7,000 to 11,000 feet.
Right.
There have been exceptions where there's trains that have now grown to 15, 16,000 feet. The interesting part of it is, yes, the linear length of the train is more, without a doubt. But the number of freight cars in that train have only increased by 10 cars in the last 45 years.
Yeah.
So did you hear his answer? He says the number of freight cars have only increased on average by 10 cars. Hey, Bee's Knees. So let me show you. I want to show you an example. And Lefty, I'm going to need your help here. I'll unmute you because I think you're probably on your phone at the dorm. Oh, you muted yourself. Okay.
I'm good.
All right, Lefty, I want to show an example of how the railroad skirts the laws, because this is going to wrap into how they do everything, basically. If the FRA says you can do this, they do this their own way. So the first thing I want to show you is what we call an articulated car. Can you see that, Lefty?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so to the average person, that would look like 2 auto rack cars.
That's right.
But how many cars is that, Lefty? When we get on our train, right? I'm your conductor, which has happened dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times. I get on your train. I have all of our paperwork. And I have my highlighters out, right? Hey, Bee's Knees. And I highlight the articulated auto rack cars. How many cars are we looking at on the screen here?
That's just one car.
That's one car. Correct.
One car.
See the black in the middle? This makes it an articulated car. So there's a knuckle. Let me get my pointer out here. This makes it an articulated car. So there's a knuckle here. This car connects to this car through a knuckle here. And there's a knuckle back here. So I can uncouple this car here, or I can uncouple this car here, but I cannot uncouple this car here. So this makes one car. Now let me show you another example. All right, Lefty, here's the next one. Here's a screenshot of articulated auto rack cars. So the average eye, you would think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cars. Lefty, how many cars on our paperwork? How many cars?
That's 5.
That's 5 cars. Because again,
how do they hook them together? Sorry, just as an outsider, like how do they get them if they're not using knuckles to do them? What do they duct tape it? Like, what's the black thing holding them together?
Lefty, you probably know the answer. I've never been inside of an articulated car.
It's just a solid axle. You can see the axle underneath that black. Usually you have 2 axles, but where it's a solid car, it's a solid car that's held by steel on top of the truck that has a pin that the car goes down through. So it's totally a solid car. There's no knuckle. It's just solid steel and metal that's holding that together on top of that truck.
Okay.
So it's kind of like this one.
You'd have to get a top. Yeah, you'd have to get like a top shot of that one, and you could see how that sets down on top of that one truck.
It's held
Okay.
in by a big pin, by a big bar that just slides right down inside of it. Allows it to go sideways, to go around curves. But essentially,
I'm assuming that on the inside though that it's like separated so that the freight's separate. Or
I've never
is
been
it all
inside of one.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
whenever they haul trucks and they have like a pup attached onto the back of it or whatever.
Mhm.
Instead of just one big truck, they put extra pieces. Sounds
I
like.
know there's ramps that they drive them in and out of. I've seen them open, but I've
Yeah.
climbed the outside of them to get to the handbrakes, but I've never climbed inside of one.
yeah, those have like little tracks the cars can go on. You know what I'm talking about? The same way they load it is the same way that's over top of that truck to get it through the car.
I got you. So it's like it's a little ramp that they slide into slots.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Just like how you load your lawnmower in back of a truck, ramps.
Mhm.
That's what's between those black pieces have little straight ramps that go across. So the
So
cars
it
can get
operates as one car, but
right.
they're counting these as one car.
Yes.
So have you seen the cars? The trains that look like semi trucks sitting on top of the rail car? They're intermodal cars, or we call them pig cars. And so here's an example of what the average person would assume would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars. Lefty, on our paperwork, how many cars is this?
And then there's one car.
It's one car. There's a brake here in the front for applying handbrakes. There's a brake on the rear car for applying handbrakes. And on one of these cars in the middle, there's going to be another handbrake on one of the sides. So you're going to have 3 handbrakes, 5 actual vessels, but on paper, it's one car. So these are, I believe, 65 feet long each.
Yes.
So when you take 65 feet times 5, compared to the average freight car being 50 feet, this is why they're saying that they're increasing trains on average of 10 car lengths, because if this is 10 cars, then you've got 50 cars here. So that's essentially an extra train that you're hauling that's now blocking your town or preventing your buses from getting to school on time, or your mailman, or any of those things, preventing an ambulance from getting across town.
That is right.
Just one example of how Class 1 railroads are able to literally skirt the system completely.
Are there limits on how much they can drag through a town like that? Like you keep talking about blocking railroads and things, or blocking, the road and stuff like that. Is there a limit car wise how many they're allowed to take through like a city center?
Not that I'm aware of, no. There's no limit. There
Gotcha.
used to be laws for blocking crossings. Certain crossings can only be blocked, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 25 minutes. We have timetables that we can look through, but they have emergency. This is another thing that comes later in the investigation hearing, is whenever they start talking about, it just totally left my mind. I'm having one of those nights, Lefty. When they're
Well,
talking about, oh my gosh, it totally left my mind.
but to your answer, no, they don't have limits of how long the trains are. It don't matter. They've lifted the crossing, the times on the crossings on the towns now, so we can block crossings as long as it takes for us to move the train now.
That's what I was going to say. So they're operating under what they're, I guess, calling emergency situations or emergency-like situations, basically insinuating that since the C word, the bug, hit, that they've had this mass loss of workforce. And because of that they've not got the staff. But here's the truth. The truth is, those videos that I put together show you and I can show you. You're actually going to see it in a slide that the NTSB board shows. The C word, the bug, had nothing to do with employees leaving their jobs. That happened because of precision scheduled railroading. Yards were shut down, pits were shut down, pit repair centers were shut down, car departments were shut down, conductors' jobs were cut, engineers were forced back to the ground, you name it. People were forced to retire. They cut their own jobs. It has nothing to do with the C word or the bug or the virus or whatever you want to call it. It has nothing to do with that. So because they cut their workforce drastically, very quickly, without thinking through the process, this is the problem that we have now. It was like, do it before thinking it through. Don't come up with a plan. Just go in there and knock them out. The yard I hired out in Ohio is the second largest railroad, class 1 railroad yard terminal in North America. It's a double hump. There's 88 hump tracks. They can hump 2 trains at a time. There's 11 or 12, I can't remember, receiving yard tracks. There used to be 3 main lines running through. There's now 5. There are 2 departure yards and then 2 departure main lines. It's the second largest, class 1 railroad in North America. They built a brand new pit for repairing locomotives. They built a brand new car department for repairing cars. It's in Bellevue, Ohio. You're going to hear a lot about it in the upcoming NTSB board meeting, because this train went right through Bellevue where it could have been inspected, but it wasn't. They weren't allowed to because they don't have the staff, and because precision scheduled railroading is about timing, not about safety. It's about departing on time, hitting your scanners on time, and arriving on time. That shows that the company is doing a good job, not the fact that people are working safely and nobody is getting hurt and towns aren't being poisoned. The layoffs were because of precision scheduled railroading. They had absolutely nothing to do with the other situation.
Yeah, DB, I seen that one. The bridge collapse. And like all of that's the responsibility of the rail company to keep their tracks up to date and their bridges and all of that. That's all stuff that they should be doing, especially since they're saving bajillions of dollars on employees. You would think they would have enough money to redo everything.
Absolutely. Hey, Rena.
It's just sad. Like, it seems like they're getting contaminated just as much now from that bridge collapse too.
Oh, 100%. 100%. The next video that I want to show you, because this is going to preface into going into the NTSB hearing investigation, they're going to talk a lot about the new 1-minute rail car inspections. Lefty, I know that a while back, hey Tater, I know that a while back there was no time limit whatsoever for doing inspections. And when I mean inspections, I mean when trains are being built inside of the yard, the car department is responsible for inspecting each car that's going to depart on that train. That's why we have yards. That's why we have terminals. That's why we build trains in terminals. So essentially, you've got cars that are at industry. So there might be 5, there might be 20, there might be 50. Depends on the industry. Locals. So we have locals that show up to work in the morning, afternoon, evening. They go out to all of these industries, couple up all of the cars, and then they pull them back to the terminal, put them in a specific track, and then the yard crews put those cars on whatever outbound train they're supposed to be on. The company that leases or owns those cars does an inbound and an outbound inspection. So when the car's placed at that specific industry and when it's pulled from that industry, they've already done an inspection on it. Car department then does an inspection on it once it gets inside of the yard limits and into the track of the train that it's going to be pulled from. So you have yard crews and you have road crews. So your yard crews report to work in the yard. They do yard moves, building trains or tearing trains apart, or roustabouts, taking locomotives, putting them on putting them on cars, making a train, pulling them to certain tracks. but they don't leave the terminal, they don't leave the yard. And then your road crews show up, get on that train. Sometimes they have to double up some tracks or knock out a shop or something like that. But they take the train over the road hundreds of miles to an outlying destination or another terminal where they swap out with another crew. Not all terminals have car departments or pits, but there is what's called a 1,000-mile inspection. Now it's a 3,000-mile inspection. So it used to be every train had to be completely inspected every 1,000 miles. So they moved it to 3,000 miles. But you're going to hear about rail car inspections, who's responsible for what, how much time are they given to do them. And this video is going to explain why there's so much talk and why this directly relates to what happened with East Palestine.
Train derailment in East Palestine, many in Congress continue to push for passing the Railway Safety Act. It would tighten the rules in the railroad industry.
Until that reform comes, though, railroad workers say trouble on the tracks will continue, which they blame on the railroad company's pressure to keep these trains moving.
Local 12's Dwayne Pullman investigates one key safety issue that railroad inspectors have long complained about: the 1-minute inspection.
When it comes to trains, time is money.
It's about billions.
Railroad unions say precision scheduled railroading, or PSR, is now driving efficiency and profits at America's major railroad companies.
Getting freight moving at all costs.
David Aroka is the national legislative director for the union representing Carmen, who perform inspections on the nation's rail cars. After the devastating derailment in East Palestine, the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, determined a superheated wheel bearing on one of the rail cars was the probable cause.
This was 100% preventable.
Were you surprised then to see what happened in East Palestine?
Oh, absolutely not.
Aroka says PSR has led to big cuts in the number of inspectors and mechanics. And the railroad company's own documents reveal PSR has led to big cuts to inspection times, too, from 3 minutes per rail car less than a decade ago to just 1 minute per rail car today. Is it enough to do a 1-minute inspection?
No, it is physically impossible to do these inspections in that short of a time frame. This is a minute.
To demonstrate the difference, Aroka showed us some videos.
Hi, I'm Patrick Clear.
Patrick is a union inspector and instructor at a training center in Missouri. In 60 seconds, he can only eye potential problems in a quick walk around. He did find a few.
Oh, we got a missing shoe here.
Next, Patrick does a full inspection of the same rail car.
Oh, we do have a crack right here.
It looks and sounds very different. This time, Patrick turns to tools.
Ooh, almost a high flange.
And a tape measure.
Right at 33 inches.
Checking 180 items, including a thorough examination of the bearings.
No damage.
Brakes. And wheel assemblies.
We got a broken bottom rod support.
Patrick identifies 5 serious safety issues.
That's correct.
That would have pulled this car from service.
I'm going to go ahead and fill out the bad order card.
But taking rail cars out of service prevents them from rolling down the rails. And Aroka says that's not a priority for precision scheduled railroading. And the end result is what?
You have a lot of stuff going down the track without any idea whether it's defective or not.
The Association of American Railroads, or AAR, which represents the railroad companies, doesn't dispute the push for 1-minute inspections, but in a lengthy statement tells us there are certain equipment defects that are impossible to detect visually when a train is not in motion, which is why the railroads are now using a layered approach, combining both visual and widely deployed technology. Among those new widely deployed high-tech tools, detectors to check wheels and bearings as the trains roll by. In its statement, AAR goes on to say the data is clear that these efforts have paid off, with the lowest number of mainline mechanical equipment failure accidents last year. According to NTSB's preliminary report on East Palestine, a hot bearing detector transmitted a critical audible alarm message instructing the crew to slow and stop the train, but it was sent too late to prevent the derailment. Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown insists more inspectors and better inspections will make a difference.
They're shortening inspections. They're not having the most qualified people do them. Of course, safety's compromised, and communities like East Palestine get hurt.
Senator Brown, a Democrat, is teaming up with Republican Ohio Senator J.D. Vance to co-sponsor the Railway Safety Act of 2023, which, for the first time, calls on the Transportation Secretary to create minimum time requirements that a qualified mechanical inspector must spend when inspecting a rail car or locomotive.
We ought to at least force them to have some common sense safety standards.
Until that bill passes, Aroka remains concerned, saying, like all things in railroading, the next catastrophe is just a matter of time.
You can't put a time constraint on safety.
Dwayne Pullman, Local 12 News.
You can find our full story and read the complete statement from the Association of American Railroads, as well as other key documents and the bill in Congress. It's on our website, local12.com, or you can view it on the go with our Local 12 News app.
And I just dropped that link in the back chat for you, Sleuth Mom, and I dropped it in the StreamYards chat. So it should be rolling through the Railway Safety Act of 2023. That takes you directly to the .gov website where you can read through it, see all the addendums, click on all the other cool little things to see what they're trying to pull. I strongly encourage you to go take a look at that because there's a lot of information. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good, but it's in there. It's in there. So what do you think about that, Lefty, Sleuth Mom? What do you think about 21 points of each car? So we're talking 15,000 feet of train, and they have 30 seconds for each side of the car to inspect it to ensure that it's safe.
I mean, that's doable, right? Just got to run really fast and have great eyesight.
I kind of think it's a direct. Go ahead, Lefty. Tell me what you think.
Oh, we know that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's all about profits, whatever the stockholders want.
Like I've told some of my chat over the last year and a half about my accident. There's a lot that I can't talk about yet because there's still some legal stuff going on, but this is a direct result of why I was hurt at work. 20 years on the job. And because of these shortened inspection times and the, gosh, how do I say it? Because of the shortcuts that these car inspectors are forced to take, I've had traumatic brain injury. I have aneurysms in my head that I'm still waiting to have repaired. I had shattered vertebrae. All the ribs on my left side were broke. My left arm, both bones were broke. I have permanent nerve damage. Gosh, Lefty, what am I forgetting? I know I'm forgetting stuff. I had 13 impaled pieces of scrap metal from being dragged by the train about 500 feet unconscious. Life flighted directly from the yard. That's why this hits personal for me. I was recently sent the actual videos of my accident, and it's infuriating. You know, my accident happened September 11th, 2021, and I'm still fighting to get the rest of my medical taken care of because we're up against corporate greed. We're up against people who don't want to admit that what they've done is wrong with precision scheduled railroading and job cuts and things like that.
And they have a lot of money to make things make things take a lot longer than it needs to.
Yeah, well, Alan Shaw's getting paid $9.77 million a year. I mean, what the hell?
He cares.
Oh yeah, he cares so much, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
Knock that shop out with that hose wrap around there. I'll get her done.
That's right.
Here we go.
Eight and sand.
Stupid idiots. So let's get into the NTSB. So the National Train Safety Board is who's responsible to investigate East Palestine, and it's taken them all this time since February 3rd, right, Sleuth Mom? February 3rd. I think it was February 3rd. Up until now.
Mm-hmm.
I thought so. So the first day, there was a lot about bearings and a lot about who's responsible for what and who answers to who. So I have Status Quo News did a really good top 5 bombshells. And I don't mean bombshells. I mean an actual bombshell. So let me pull this up. And we're going to skim through this to show what happened day 1. And then day 2, I have some timestamps that are going to they're going to show you exactly where the blame goes. And after that, my email will be available. Sleuth Mom's email will be available. If you're directly involved or have been harmed, or your family has been harmed, or your property has been harmed, or you need legal anything, then I want you to contact Sleuth Mom or I so that we can get you the legal information that you need. There's a local attorney who's a FELA attorney who handles federal railroad issues. And I've worked with Aaron Brockovich and Bob Bocock. They have corporate attorneys that are going to be back in the area here before long. And so we want your name on the list so that you can go after the people that you need to get the help that you need to. And this comes from Status Quo News. So I'm going to drop the link in the back chat, Sleuth Mom, and then I'll stick it in the chat over there while this plays for a couple minutes.
Responsibility is it to maintain and provide the train consist?
I have actually been a customer of BetterHelp for a little over
then
2
we have
years
that.
now, and I was able to get matched up with a therapist in like
The railroad will provide the train consist.
Mm-hmm. And earlier, I think we were hearing that it was the responsibility of the crew, though.
Yeah, the crew will provide the consist. The dispatcher in Atlanta can provide the consist, and you have the potential of getting it off Ask Rail if you have Ask Rail.
Okay, so the crew can provide the consist. The railroad has a responsibility to provide the train consist. Okay. What time did you arrive on scene?
Might have been around 11:30. The video I shot was like 11:45, so I'm guessing around 11:30, somewhere in there.
Okay. And Chief Drabeck, I agree with you. It is not the fire service's responsibility to drive a mile up and find a train crew while they're trying to deal with a terrible incident. It is the railroad's responsibility to maintain that, provide that information according to federal regulations.
I freaking love this lady.
I do too. She is no bullshit.
She just calls him right to the table like, no, sir, that's not their job.
Yep.
Like,
It's not. It is not. Yeah, she's a no bullshit kind of person. That is for sure. And what she's saying is true. And if this would have been handled the right way, the way that it should have been handled, there'd be no questions asked about the consist. I mean, we listened to the 911 recording. I have that. I can pull it up. It was a little over 2.5 hours before anyone said, I've got the consist. Who do I send it to? Like, we heard it from 9 minutes in. The first contact was made to Norfolk Southern corporate office through the emergency number. They have the capability of pulling up the consist. This is where I get heated and a little pissy. They have the ability to pull it up and look at it. They can email it. All they had to say was, this is what you're dealing with. These are the chemicals that are in the train. They could have listed them off, They didn't have to say, we're trying to get eyes on it. We don't know where it derailed at, blah, 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 blah. I mean, they're so negligent with what they did. At the same point, You know, I have the EPA lawsuit right here in front of me. I'm looking at it as we speak. What they sent to the EPA versus the actual consist that was scanned every time that train went by a scanner is not the same. It is not the same information. Cars are not in the right position. We pulled up a video of drone footage and we were able to actually identify all of the vinyl chloride cars. And, you know, they talk about 5 vinyl chloride cars. Let me just pull it up here. They talk about 5 vinyl chloride cars needing to be vented and burned, right? That's what this whole thing is about. Why the hell did you blow up the cars? Why did you release all these chemicals? Why did you do all of this? But the truth is, there's 4 vinyl chloride cars closer to the head end in position 28, 29, 30, and 31. I have them numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the 5th vinyl chloride car is way down here in position number 55, separate from the other 4. So keep that in mind when we're listening to the bullshit that's about to come out of these people's mouths. I'm sorry I get heated about it, but I can't stand liars like this that are intentionally poisoning a town, children, elderly people, people that are vulnerable, animals, human beings, and then saying, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. We got it covered. We're going to figure it out. Like, what? It's not how shit goes. You're responsible for this. You cut the jobs, didn't inspect the cars. You didn't do anything that you're supposed to do. You poisoned an entire town, most likely several counties, if not more. And then you want to, sit on your hands and just wait and see what happens. I mean, people are not dead right now, but they're going to be if we don't get them help, if we don't get them out of there. People are tucking their children in at night and not knowing, they're completely unaware that their days with their children are numbered. And that's why I can't sleep at night thinking about East Palestine a lot of times, because it's insane. It's insane to me. It's absolutely insane to me that Alan Shaw can make $9.77 million a year, 4,000 whatever 500% profits this company has made this year. And people are tucking their children in at night, not knowing that the chemicals that they're living in, bathing in, cooking in, and breathing in could mean that their days with their children are numbered. There's something wrong with this. And I'm sorry, it's not drama. This ain't a drama. This isn't about drama. This is about human life. This is about doing the right thing. And this is about holding people accountable.
It is drama, though, because it's pretty freaking dramatic what's happening to these people. And the fact that his money, it's not even salary, like it's bonuses. Take some of those bonuses and put it towards freaking fixing your crap. Like, seriously, I'm sorry, but you need to not get a bonus for a quarter, buddy, so that we can get this fixed. How about that?
Right. How about move your ass and your family to East Palestine front and center, and you live in it. If it's safe for everybody else, then you go live in it, Alan Shaw, and take Cindy Sanborn and all the rest of them with you. You go live
Your
in it.
freaking your thumbnail, the picture that you have, it's
Mhm.
so freaking sad to see that. And
Absolutely.
it, because it's to say the place where you want to be, or
Right.
something along those lines. And it's like now nobody can live there. Nobody can live there. I mean, and the people who are living there, what's going to happen to them? How many of them are going to get cancer? How many of their children are going to have, genetic mutations in their children, or not be able to have children, or whatever,
Mhm.
it's scary. And then again, this is our freaking farmland. This is farming America. This is our crops. This is our cattle. This is our eggs, our chickens.
Absolutely.
Guys, they're eating and drinking this water. They're eating this grass. And then they're bottling milk and sending it to you. Like, if you think that this only affects East Palestine, Ohio, you're wrong.
You're
You're
crazy.
very, very wrong.
Yeah. It's leaking. It's in the rivers. I mean, look, the last time I was there, I talked to a couple of different families. They've had this farmland in their family for decades. So like great grandfather and grandmother owned, and then it's been passed down to them. Like, some of them they leased their property out and then they moved away, but their retirement plan, they just moved back, retired, they're loving it, loving the country life. Others, they spent their whole retirement fund to buy property there to farm. I mean, these are people that, like you said, they live off the land, they feed themselves, they feed the neighbors, they feed the communities.
Right.
I mean, so much farmland. And it's just, to me, it's just it's crazy when you talk about the, defects and the medical side of this. I've talked to mothers whose children literally pee blood. They pee every time they pee.
So awful.
They're peeing bright red blood. They're going, they're pooping blood clots. And we're talking young children, like elementary school and younger. There's been a couple of pregnancy issues. I mean, it's happening. It's happening a lot faster than it in Flint, Michigan. But we're talking about children that are like,
right,
skipping to school, and the mud puddles that they're skipping around still have chemicals on the top of them. I mean,
it
what
just
they're
keeps
going
going
through,
up in the rain
crazy.
and
Mhm.
coming right back down. And that's the problem, and then it goes to other communities too. That cloud went right over top of us, the cloud, and went all the way to Canada. They were seeing fallout in the rain from these
Yeah.
chemicals, and so it's spreading everywhere. I mean, and we were talking about this the other day, and it sounded comical to my chat a little bit, I think, because I said, I don't even know if it's safe for my kids to be eating the carrots out of our own garden. Should we
Right.
even be planting? Like, I have no freaking clue what's in our soil right now.
Right.
No clue. But
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think about. I mean, I can tell you that there are people that have passed away, but their paperwork doesn't show
oh
that
yeah,
it's from chemical
pre-existing
burns.
conditions, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Well,
Every
no, they had a
single
heart
one.
condition.
That's
I'm sure
exactly
they
what they
did.
say.
Mhm.
Asthma, heart condition, respiratory distress, this,
Just blame
that,
it on the
whatever.
C word, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yep, that happened. I mean, it was wintertime and people were having rashes because they were told the water was safe. It's okay. It's okay. Water's good. You can take a shower. And they're showering in the water and their children have rashes and they have rashes. One mother had to stop breastfeeding because of rashes. Can you imagine not being able to feed your child? You can't feed your baby because of rashes on your breasts and in your armpits, all over your whole chest. You can't feed your baby. Like, that's heartbreaking to me.
And
But
that's
there
sad
have
too,
been
because
deaths.
then you have to use bottles that you have to wash in wet water.
Right.
So you got to go buy distilled water to be able to even wash the bottles to be able to continue to feed and take care of your child, because you can't use the water in your sink.
Right. No, there's a conductor that is going from Bellevue to Conway. I talked to her a little bit ago. She was going to come on, but she got called out to work, so she can't be here. But I said, "What's it like going through there now? Are you still, do you still smell chemical?" She said, "Yep." She said they have to close the windows. They turn off the air, in the cab of locomotive. She said every time they go through, they can still smell the chemicals. I said, "Is it different?" She said, "It's just like the first week that the
Well,
derailment happened."
they leaked it all into that ground, and then they
Yes.
quote unquote burned it off. The cloud went up, but guess what? It's still in the ground. And then how
Yes.
much of that water that they were trying to dam, and they were trying to clean up this water and things like that, and then the dam broke. It flooded that one day, and
Right.
it went everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we were able to prove that the ditch that was dug wasn't lined with anything.
Right. I remember going over that on our last
Mhm.
video about this.
Yeah, there was no Lefty, what is it? There was PVC pipe, I think, right? Is that what it was that was supposed to be put down to drain those cars?
Well, it should have been like a thick rubber mat
There you go. That.
to,
See, that's why I'm
like they
making.
put under ponds when they do ponds for
Mhm.
coal mines and stuff. They put a big thick rubber mat down there so the water does not leach through to the ground, so it won't contaminate the underground water supply.
Yeah. And I have a picture. While I play this next section here, I'm going to pull it up and show you that after the vent and burn was done, it's, I have contacts that people that live in East Palestine that send me photos and things like that. And this is after the vet and burn, quote unquote, vet and burn, which doesn't freaking exist. It's chemical warfare. Let's be real about it. Sit down, Alan Shaw, you bastard. It's not that. You poisoned these people to hide the fact that your train wasn't being legally ran. You were afraid of all the inspections. Let's get real about it. The truth is coming out. But I got a photo that shows everything still sitting on a pallet where they were supposed to, put it down on the ground to do. It's just sickening. It makes me sick to my stomach. I seriously rage about it. I rage about it. Vanessa is coming in. BC is here. Lindsay Culver, thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it. Lighting the way home. Good to see you, BC. I always love seeing BC. I just wanted to say hey to you guys. I'm going to play this and then pull that photo up for you.
Just reading through all the transcripts of the interviews. So East Palestine Dispatch did call Norfolk Southern at 9:04 p.m. in Atlanta to obtain information about the derailment. 9:04. I want you to keep that in mind. NS said they'd have to call him back. Another call was placed at 9:30 by East Palestine Dispatch to Norfolk Southern about whether they should start evacuations. I'm not sure whether they got return calls, but the timeline for the consist itself shows that Columbiana County Emergency Management Agency received the consist via email from Norfolk Southern at 9:56 p.m., basically a full hour later. The deputy chief of East Palestine, 9:45:10. Chief Jones didn't receive the consist until 10:23 and had to get it from SEMA, I think, or the Columbiana County Emergency Management Agency. The East Palestine Police Department didn't receive the consist until 1:30 a.m. And the East Palestine Fire Chief here found the printed train consist at the command post at 2:15 a.m., sitting on a desk. Can you explain why it took so long to get the train consist to those that are responsible not just for protecting their own firefighters, but for and protecting those in the community, but for making sure that they were able to fight what they were facing?
You pause for
I'm
1 second.
unaware
I have
of
a question.
the dispatch center.
Absolutely.
So this, okay, just to explain, because I know that there's probably more people than just me wondering. The NTSB, this is like their board, right? So it's not like the Congress, it's not anybody who can like bring legal charges against them or anything like that. This is them having to answer to their people. Is that correct?
The National Train and Safety Board answers to, they answer to the infrastructure, transportation and infrastructure of the Congress.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering, was like, so, because she is very, like, I love her. She is very much so like on them about the details and stuff like that. And I just didn't know, like, if she was actually representing the people's interest and what is going to be the people's interest,
Mm-hmm.
or if somehow that this was going to tie back around to somebody who would be like, helping them brush crap under a rug. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's a lot of that shit going on too.
Right.
So basically, the investigation had to be done, and so, I mean, maybe they're all being honest, maybe they're not. I'm not quite sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of the answers don't make sense because we have the lawsuit, we have the paperwork, we have the EPA reports, we have all of that stuff, and so some of this stuff doesn't really make sense. But so they have to go back then to Congress, to the Transportation and Infrastructure Department, which the previous video that I showed, it'd be Chairman DeFazio, who was raging a little bit about precision scheduled railroading being all about, the hedge funds and it's not safe and train lengths. So he's the chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Board. And he was questioning the FRA director, who I forget his name now. He's the previous one. They're all jackasses as far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned. But
Mhm.
yeah, so their report is going to go to Transportation and Infrastructure of Congress, and
Okay.
then from there we'll see, we'll see
What they
what
do.
what
Mhm.
they do with Norfolk Southern. But I mean, it's obvious that NS is responsible. But what's unique about this and the NTSB board, and why I wanted all of, every minute of this, is that not so you've got the government, you've got you've got federal government, your state legislation, you've got Norfolk Southern, each department, mechanical, signals and maintenance, communications, you've got, your corporate offices, you've got all of the important people sitting in the same room, along with your union officials, the presidents of
Okay.
the unions and other class one railroads. So there's a
Okay.
lot of accountability. So it's like you can't, I mean, you can lie. I can, I can tell you a lie, but then the guy next to me is gonna
It's gonna
be
call you.
like, yes.
Mm.
He's not gonna look
Okay.
at me and be like, you're a liar, but he's gonna say, no, that's not the answer I would give you. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So this is where it
No,
all
that makes
comes out.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for clarifying, because I just wanted to make sure. I figured that it was something like that, but I just wanted to double check before, we kept going.
Yeah, I should have explained that. It's a good question. This is kind of where it all comes out, where one department or one entity can blame another, but then everybody in the middle, plus you've got your actual investigators. And here's the thing, like none of them want to get their hands dirty. None of them want to be responsible. Communications, if they have nothing to do with this accident, they don't want to take responsibility for it, because this report, this is everything for how this plays out and how legislation runs when it comes to the two-man crew bill, when it comes to all the laws that are going to be, all of your governors and senators are going to be writing up transportation safety laws now. You got to stay on top of that, because what are they
Yeah,
going to
keep an
slide
eye on
in
that
with
though,
it?
because they will pass it through one side. They will
Mhm.
celebrate that it passed, and then just like they do with the child safety laws,
Mhm.
they will celebrate it and then quietly shovel it under a rug as they don't pass it through the other side.
Absolutely.
So,
Here's that photo I was telling you about. It's somebody who lives there sent it to me. This is after the quote unquote, I hate even saying this, the quote unquote controlled vent and burn, the blow up, the explosion, the big cloud. This is after that. And you can see right here that none of the stuff was used. This was supposed to be for draining and, the right way, whatever they want to call it, but it was never used. None of it was used. There's
yeah, but if
before
we
and after
open that
photos.
and then, have to use it, then we won't have it for the next tragedy.
Absolutely. You know how it is.
You're just trying to save stuff.
Yeah, we ain't gonna talk about it. We ain't gonna talk about it. We're just gonna do it. We're gonna tell you what we want. But okay, so let's get back to the bombshells here, and then we'll get over to two. If this starts to run too long, we can turn this into two different streams. I'm okay with that. I got timestamps on them. The first day was really a lot of who's who and who reports to who and who does who and all of that kind of stuff.
Calls from East Palestine to NS. I'm not aware of that. When I got a call from EMA Director Clark, I then sent the consist that I received while I was en route to the scene. It is the railroad's responsibility to provide that train consist.
Thank you. Julie, can you pull up the exhibit?
I'm going to skip
Hi,
through
this is
to the
Katie
next
Porter.
timestamp. And then
I'm officially running for the U.S. Senate in California, and I need your
ads, yo.
CFR 49, Part 215, and Appendix D. Briefly describe the differences between the Part 215 and the Appendix D railcar inspections in terms of what gets inspected and who is authorized to perform the inspections.
Okay, so just to make this question a little more clear. Hey, Lisa Schenkel, good to see you. Let me explain what I was saying earlier about all the job cuts. When they cut the car department and the car inspector jobs and then the conductor jobs. So now you have half or less than that. And so she's asking, what's the difference between the inspection that's done by a car inspector and a conductor? Meaning the car inspector who's inspecting each car as the train is built or after it's built and it's getting ready to depart, versus me, the conductor who's on the train and a hose snaps or we go in emergency because you know, we broke a knuckle or something like that happened. So he's going to explain this.
Thank you. Under 215, the group of people called Carmen are authorized to do the safety inspections. They are a group of safety inspectors, and under Appendix D, the train crews can do the inspection. I actually have a printout of 215 here. I believe it's Exhibit E22 in your record. But this here represents 215, which the Carmen are extensively trained in. And out of that entire example, only this small section and the small section at the bottom of this page is what the train crews inspect. All in all, on a freight car, you're looking at anywhere from 90 to 105 points of inspection per side of a freight car, depending on what type of freight car we're talking about. Whereas the Appendix D only hits on 12 points. It is meant to be a very limited type of inspection to get the car to a safety inspection point. In addition to that, to outline the type of training that these safety inspectors have, these highly qualified inspectors, under 215, they are issued these wheel gauges. And they use these wheel gauges in order to assess the total health of the freight car, something that is never issued to a freight train crewman.
So in essence, there's up to 100 points, 115 points, 112 points that a carman or a car inspector has to inspect. And remember that 30 seconds on each side of the car. Lefty, how feasible is that? How realistic is that time frame in order to thoroughly inspect those cars?
You're not going to get to inspect those cars.
I mean, can they even climb through to the other side within 30 seconds? Because I couldn't.
Oh no, you got to take consideration the walking conditions and all that. There ain't no way. I couldn't do it.
Exactly. I mean, it's a little unrealistic.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like if Lefty and I are on a train together, we go across the road, we go in emergency, and I find a knuckle that's broke, I can repair that in the field. I can replace a hose that has leaking air or missing a gasket or something like that in the field. But to do a full inspection, it doesn't even make sense to do those type of inspections on line of road when you're in between two terminals. I was never issued those tools. Were you?
No, that's
See what I
your
mean?
car inspectors, state inspectors, and I've seen federal inspectors have them,
Mm-hmm.
but no conductors.
Right. We're not given those tools. So when they cut the jobs and they cut the departments, then there's no one to inspect the trains. And so when the detectors, which is what's going to come up next, the detectors that are supposed to be every 13 to 15 miles, there's a detector and it lets us know like train's okay, or got a hot journal, you got a hot wheel, you got a flat spot, something's going on, you better stop and check it out. Called wayside detectors. So they're going to get into that now.
Yearly on air brakes and mechanical defects. And the carmen are required by the federal regulation to go through this type of training very regularly. The train
in Madison, Illinois, on the first car.
Oh, I need to go back to that and show you that map.
In Madison.
Okay, so this train that blew up in East Palestine. So here in Madison, this is where the industry is at. And so that's where the cars were filled and inspected by the supplier, picked up by the local, whatever the local crew was, and they were taken to Decatur. Decatur's a fairly large yard. So an outbound inspection would have been done on that train there. and then taken down to Bellevue, I think is how you call it, in Illinois. And then a crew gets on it, and then they take it into Williamsport, and then a crew gets on there, and then they go to Peru, Indiana. I've been to Peru. If you've heard me talk about Delphi, this is right close to Delphi, Indiana. From Peru into Toledo, they're missing this little area right here. And I think it's critical that they don't have this on the map because this is where Bellevue Terminal, Moorman Yard, is located. The second largest Class 1 rail yard in North America that's fully equipped or supposed to be with a car department. So when you're going to hear them talk about detectors, that there were 300 detectors that this train went over. And at one point, the ATC desk, who monitors those detectors, has the ability to silence those wayside detectors so that the crew gets a message that says no defects on your train. But they know that you're trending hot. They know that you have an axle or a bearing or a wheel or whatever that's trending hot. But if your train's delayed, they don't tell you that you need to stop and do an inspection on that car. They used to, but they don't anymore. Now they have standards. How hot does it have to be? Well, I guess that varies depending on who you talk to in the company. You'll find later. But Bellevue Terminal, which is right through here, this is exactly where the train could have been inspected. So trending hot, just west of Toledo and east of Toledo, train should have been stopped in Bellevue and inspected, and it was not. It was ran right on through into Cleveland, and then it was still trending hot. Numbers were getting much hotter. They knew that there was a problem, and so hence East Palestine is where the bearing blew.
In Illinois, on the first car, what type of inspections were performed on the first car to derail from when Norfolk Southern first received the car in Madison, Illinois, up to the train derailment in East Palestine?
My understanding of the record, when Norfolk and Southern first received the car, there was no inspection done. So the car came from another railroad, and traditionally there would be an interchange inspection and the cars would be looked at. But as I've said, there's less and less Class 1 carriers, and therefore they are relying more on the Appendix D. This car came into Decatur, Illinois, passed through Toledo, Ohio, where it stopped, Cleveland, Ohio, where it stopped, and passed through Bellevue, Ohio on their.
You heard him say Bellevue, Ohio, but you don't see it on the map. And Bellevue is actually before Cleveland, but he's not from the area or the railroad, so he's not familiar with that. But he knows. He said Bellevue for a reason, because he knows there is a car department. There's supposed to be a car department there. He doesn't probably realize how many cuts have been made, but there's a car department there. There are inspectors that are there on duty.
System. There are qualified mechanical inspectors at all these points, and they were not allowed to inspect this car at any of those locations.
Did you hit that, Sleuth Mom? They were not allowed to do any inspections in any of those locations, including Bellevue.
And so my question is, with that being said, since this horrific thing happened and we know now, hey, we messed up, have they changed that? Are they doing inspections now? Are they starting to hire back inspectors, any of those things? Or are we just going to keep shoveling trains through like they're nothing and expecting horrible things not to happen?
They've changed nothing. Lefty, do you want to tell them about your recent experience with the detector? If you don't, that's okay.
Oh, no. I'm trying to think. It's been so many. Yeah.
This was just last week.
Yeah, when you go over them, it'll say no defects, and then there'll be somebody come on on the radio and tell you, hey, such and such car has got trending hot. You need to stop, take a look at it. And it's still happening.
Whenever that happens and you stop and you take a look at it, if there's something wrong with it, what do you do at that point? Do they send somebody out to fix it? Are you expected to fix it? Do you just sit until it cools down and then have to stop every so often? Like, what do they do?
Oh no, usually if it's a handbrake or something, the conductor will take it off and that'll fix it. If it's something that we can't repair, we'll tone them up and tell them, and they'll tell us what to do if we have to set it out or we need to go to the next forwarding place yard to set it out, and they'll restrict it to like 10 mile an hour or 30 mile an hour or 15 mile an hour speed to the next yard where you can set it out.
Okay.
As a conductor on the road, I want to show you this right here. This is what's called a temp stick or temperature indicator stick. It's like a chalk-like substance on the top of it. And do you remember way back in school, teachers that had when the chalk got really, really small, they would stick it in that little stick thing so they could still use it. It's kind of
Yep.
like that. And it feels like chalk on the end. It feels like a gummy chalk. And so whenever I would be on a train that would get stopped by a detector and I would walk back and find it, we take the tip of this. Let me go back to this page here. We take the tip of this right here and put it right on the bearing on the outside of the wheel. You just rub it across there, and if it melts, then the bearing is too hot. So it's rated for, I believe, 105 degrees, or it's rated at 150 degrees. So if it melts, then that bearing is too hot, and then we notify the wayside detector department, and then they tell us what to do. That's the tool that we have to inspect bearings on the road.
A $12 stick. I mean, that
Yes.
seems efficient. Elizabeth asked, do inspectors who are doing their jobs too well get in trouble? Like if you're noticing too many errors or, dangerous things and stuff like that, do they reprimand you for taking too long, or
That
what
is a good
happens?
question. It's a very good question. They actually address this coming up here in this, either in this video or I definitely have the timestamp, but the answer is yes. So Norfolk Southern personnel in this meeting are going to say no. But Jason Cox, who is the man telling the truth, who's the transportation communication investigator, he's going to say that there's sworn testimony from people who were working in the yard when they were questioned, they were sworn in and questioned, that yes, they've been reprimanded for taking longer than 30 seconds per car, per train. Absolutely. They're in trouble for that.
I just
I don't
can't
think anyone's
understand
doing
how
it
they
too
came up with 30
soon.
seconds.
Yeah,
Like,
precision scheduled railroading.
yeah, like how do you decide that is an efficient amount of time to inspect a car? I would like to see the people who come up with these numbers
Right.
and like these policies. I would love to see them put them into action and show us how it's done, because I can't see a feasible way. And I mean, I've never worked on a railroad, so maybe that's why I can't. So, clearly we need these professionals to come out and show us how it's done.
Right. I remember being a yardmaster whenever precision scheduled railroading first started being talked about in Bellevue. And so crews have an hour and a half, so 90 minutes call time. So you get called to work, you have 90 minutes to report to be on duty. And so as trains are being humped into classification yards, and then yard crews, the pullback jobs, they call them, are pulling those cars out of the classification tracks and then shoving those into departure tracks. From the time the inbound train enters the yard, they want within 3 hours that train to be completely humped, so shoved over top of the hump and then reclassified in the classification tracks, and then pulled by the pullback jobs into the departure tracks. And then the car department have inspected those, and it has to be done within the 90 minutes that the crew gets called to be on duty. So by the time the crew's on duty, they want you to be on your power, tying onto your outbound train, and then pulling that shit out of there, period. And so with precision scheduled railroading, everything is on a time. It's not by the job, it's by the time. And so if they say you've got 60 minutes to hump these 280 cars, then you have to have it done in 60 minutes. If you don't, then that shows as a failure. And so that shows that's reported as a failure. And failures mean, now corporate greed is going to be affected. Now you can't go back to the government and say, look, we're doing it good.
Yeah. God forbid we don't get, our $90 million bonus.
Right.
DB said, if I'm comprehending correctly, that's 30 seconds per double car. Yeah, that's
Yes.
per side or for both sides of it.
Yep. And for those
And,
articulated cars, even that's 30 seconds for, all 5 of those north or southbound cars.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
TK is saying, when they went through Decatur, Illinois, is there any record of them saying or letting anyone know something wasn't right? There's a reason I'm asking.
So from what the NTSB board is being told by the investigators, there was no problem with the train in Decatur, except for there was no interchange inspection that was done. So there should have been an interchange inspection done, but the wayside detectors were not showing that there was anything trending hot, that there was a hot bearing or anything like that until just almost into Toledo. So just a little bit west of Toledo was when the car started trending hot. Right. Now, I mean, that's why we have wayside detectors is, to let us know if something is going on or something is wrong. And that's why we have an ATC desk to let us know that something is trending hot. And actually further along in this hearing, the question is even asked. So the reason that the ATC desk, whoever was assigned to this territory, when they saw that it was trending hot, under normal circumstances before precision scheduled railroading, there would have been enough people manning the desk to see that something was trending hot to call the train, 32N, and you've got a trending hot. We need you to stop, blah, blah, blah. But they're manning such a huge area and so many trains and so many of these wayside detectors that they didn't even see that it was trending hot. So the question was asked, if the person manning the desk would have seen that they had a trending hot bearing and they stopped the train and the conductor went back to look, would they have been able to see that something was wrong? And the answer was yes, because it had gotten so hot that it was almost melted by the time that it was east of Cleveland. So that's the whole cause of the derailment, was a bearing that, that basically burned out.
So now my question is, the people who are actually watching these screens and watching this, I'm going to just assume that they also had positions cut there. And so they're watching more cars than probably they should be.
Absolutely.
What's that whole setup look like? I wonder if we can find a picture of that so that people can understand. Because I imagine, like, in my mind, I'm just picturing like screens and lights. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They
You won't
kind of
find
show
a picture anywhere.
No.
You might find an older picture.
Mhm.
But none of those photos are public anymore because of Homeland Security issues. But yeah,
Oh, gotcha.
exactly what
Yeah,
you're
that makes sense.
exactly what you're talking about. There's 4 or 5 screens, at each desk. They sit in cubicles and they have a section of track. And as the trains go across or over top of those wayside detectors, the crew gets a message. Lefty, doesn't it? It sounds like, let's see, I'll do 45.1. It sounds like this. It sounds like NS 218 milepost S45.1. No defects. And it'll say it twice.
Yeah, it don't
Okay.
say the train. It don't say the train no more. It just gives the milepost and like single main 1, main 2, and then no defects.
Yeah.
Or until you have something hit it like we did the other day, it'll say critical alarm and you have to come to a stop.
And then later, so Lefty, you're about to hear this for the first time ever because NS has never admitted it or spoke on it, but they had to in this at the end the investigation hearing, and I about come out my chair about it. But you remember how many of us were like, they have to be able to turn these scanners off, like they have to be able to, override them or whatever. Well, he's about to admit it. He's about to admit that they do that, and the only reason that they would do that is because the train has to stay on schedule. There's no other reason for it. There's absolutely no other
Wow.
reason to not tell a crew, hey, stop and check something out. I know they do it if you're ahead of schedule in order to cause a delay. And so, yeah, they have the ability to turn off the scanners or to give you an okay message, even though it's not. They have the ability to override it, and he admits it. He just makes it sound funny.
Sorry, I'm asking so many questions. I
No, I'm
just,
glad.
you know,
No, I'm glad. Yeah. And that's why I wanted Lefty here. If I can answer him, he can. For sure.
Thank you. Regarding the types of rail car inspections in yards, what does the term ghost tracks refer to? Mr. Cox, do you know if Norfolk Southern...
I'm going to answer that though. Ghost tracks are tracks that are in the computer system that don't exist, and they're outside of the terminal limits. And it allows a yardmaster to park a train, showing it arriving on time, even though it's not been arrived on time yet. So they can show that they're arriving on time, even though they're not, by parking a train in a ghost track. And at the same time, the car department is not responsible to go out and inspect that train at an interstation. So in a halfway between point, or that terminal, if it doesn't have to come through the terminal. And so that's what a ghost track is.
Southern has addressed the FRA administrator's concern
and do the detailed inspections. Their response was, this letter says I do not have to do this. Therefore, Norfolk and Southern is not going to do this.
Mr. Hopewell, has Norfolk Southern responded to the September 22 letter from the FRA administrator?
I'm not aware. I'm not aware of this letter or our status on a response to it.
Which that's kind of weird. But the whole letter was asking for the details on why this car was not inspected, why this train was not inspected. They said, why was this not inspected?
Sorry.
Can you find out for us, please?
I can.
Can I ask who here?
They want to know the standards that have been set by Norfolk Southern for inspecting cars and inspecting trains. And the Federal Railroad Administration, it comes down to recommendations versus regulations. So Norfolk Southern says that they wanted clarification. And so the NTSB board says, well, did you get your clarification? And NS's answer is, well, I'm not sure. I don't know if we got it or not. I'm not aware of this letter. I don't know anything about it. That's their answer for it. Kind of crazy.
Would be able to answer that question?
I would have to consult with the rest of my colleagues who are here if someone's read in on that topic.
Yeah, don't sweat it, bro. It ain't no big deal. It's your job to know, but that's all right that you don't.
Thank you.
This lady just
Mr.
always has
Cox.
like resting bitch face talking to him, for real, for real. She is always so irritated talking to these people.
Definitely.
I don't blame her though. Like,
Did
she's
Norfolk
obviously
Southern
mad.
Oh, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't sit. You're welcome, Tater. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit and ask the questions and get an answer like that and be like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Did you just say you don't know the answer? You don't know your own regulations? It's like the FRA used to issue regulations. These are the rules. This is what's going to have to happen. And if not, we're going to fine the shit out of you, and so that you never do it again. But now they're recommendations. That's crazy to me.
employee inspect the rail car from the time when Norfolk Southern received it up to the derailment in East Palestine, whether it be a carman inspection or a train crew inspection?
Now, Lefty, I need your reaction to this question when he answers it. Okay. So she just asked him, did a Norfolk Southern employee inspect the rail car from the time Norfolk Southern received it up to the derailment in East Palestine, whether it be a carman or a train crew? So you saw the map, right? It was like west of Decatur.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the answer.
For clarity, you're talking about the car that burned off the journal?
Yes.
The answer is no.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Give me your reaction to that.
So they're saying it was pulled out of the industry and neither the train crew or a carman inspected that car.
Correct. Nobody did.
Well, that's not good.
It was never inspected.
Right, because it's all supposed to be checked before you pull it from the industry. What a conductor can do, the C100.
Yeah. You remember the 1,000-mile inspections? Remember when 233 would come into Portsmouth and you get called for it and the car department will be out there doing the 1,000-mile inspection?
Yep. They got it wavered to 3,000 now.
Yeah. When I used to work going Bellevue to Peru, I would come on duty in Peru, and some of those trains would be having their 1,000-mile inspections because they came from west of Decatur. Now, it's not 1,000 miles, but I would assume this train would have had 1,000-mile inspection at some point before it hit East Palestine.
Yes, you should think somewhere in the yard it would have had its class 1.
Right. This used to be one of the trains that came into Bellevue Yard that is set off in a pickup and then left out over Route 99 and then went down the eastbound that way and made its way to Conway.
Okay.
So it would do an inspection there. So they've rerouted it. They're a bunch of dicks. That's what it comes down to. Sorry, Sleuth Mom. I'm trying to keep it clean for you, but these guys piss me off.
It's okay. Did I hear you say that instead of doing every 1,000 miles, now they do it 3,000?
That's right.
Yeah, there's
FRA recommendation was 3,000, and they said, okay, we'll do it at 3,000.
Yeah, there's some trains that still do 1,000-mile inspection, and there's certain trains that do 3,000. And then they used to, if it was off air for 4 hours, you'd have to redo the test. Now they've got it to 24 hours. If they're off air, that now you retest them. It used to went from 4 hours. Now it's 24. So
What the heck?
with this PSR,
You have to explain what air is. When you talk about air, you have to explain what air is. You got to remember.
okay, the air is what works the brakes on the train. That's what goes through the whole train is the air. So when we draw it down, the air, it'll set the brakes on all the cars. So that's very important to have.
Right. It's so that the train slows down to a stop as one moving vessel.
Right.
Otherwise, the engines, brakes are applied and then the cars slam in to each other until it comes to a stop. So it's a safe way to stop.
The thing is, what happened was when when Trump was in administration, he appointed, I believe, the FRA chief that got appointed was a former CEO of a railroad.
Correct.
So fact check me on this, but if you would go back and look, the union always puts in requests of what they would like to see the FRA implement. And then the railroads, the class 1, all the railroads would do that. And most of the railroads got their bucket list approved when this guy was appointed to the FRA chief.
Yeah, we wanted railroaders. We wanted people who have been 20 plus years on the railroad, that have worked as a conductor, that worked as an engineer, that maybe came from the car department or, the pit. We wanted guys that knew what it was like to work our jobs, because there's no other industry anywhere in the country, not even the military. It's so completely different. I was in the medical field. I was a paramedic before. I was used to long hours. I was used to being away, but not like the railroad.
And the railroads is self-regulated and pretty much, and if you look, some of these laws that was supposed to be passed, it's kind of went silent now. So just follow the money. You can see where all the congressmen and senators and all of them has kind of hushed up.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Sherrod Brown was on top of it, right? I was talking to him. Had several phone conversations with Sherrod Brown and his wife. And yeah, they shut right the hell up.
Yep.
Aaron
That's sad.
Brockovich comes into town and they declare her a
Terrorist.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, they just, that it's I mean, there's a guy that was, I can't remember his name, Philip, I think is his first name. I can't remember now. But he was a maintenance away employee who worked out of Conway, Pennsylvania. And so when you hear dumbass Shaw talking about, we found a guy who's a frontline railroader who lives in East Palestine, and we hired him to be the liaison. Yeah, they gave him $1 million on a house. And he lives outside of the city limits somewhere. To give him $1 million to basically be like the face of East Palestine. And he's who's running around snapping photos of kids playing and shit and putting it on the company propaganda crap. Look what we're doing for East Palestine. We're making it amazing again. $1 million later. So when they're
It's amazing what people will sell their souls for.
totally sold their souls. Totally. Let's get to the part where they admit that these rail cars, the vinyl chloride cars, the vessels were never punctured. There was no need for a vent and burn. There was no need for a vent and burn at all. There was no need. They were intact. They might have been derailed, but they were not punctured. The car is designed to release the pressure between the interior and the outer tanks. But they were not on fire, they were not leaking, and there was no need for them to be burned up or exploded or whatever you want to call it.
Essentially, the reason that they did it was to clear the tracks faster, right?
I believe it was because the train wasn't built correctly, because they just slapped all them chemicals
that up.
together and said, roll it on down. And they didn't stop, and they didn't want to stop because it was delayed. In a perfect world, it would have been blocked better, and all the vinyl chloride would have been together. All of the glycol would have been together. All of the ethyl alcohol would have been together. All of the benzene would have been together in a normal train. That's how it would have been blocked, and it wasn't. And so because it wasn't, if the FRA shows up, and of course they're going to show up to an explosion, or they're going to show up to, a derailment like this, they're going to look at car numbers. And so what's the best way to get rid of the car numbers? So there's no identifying characters whatsoever to be able to look up what's in each car, is to blow that bitch up. That's my theory. That's my educated guess, but yeah. Sit down, lie down, or squat down, because it's about to go down. They're about to admit some truths right now.
Yeah, Sleuth
To
Mom,
approve
I think also not to stop you, I think
Go ahead.
also it was to get those the tracks open too. They got to move the freight. We have a supply chain problem.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Blow it up, get that shit off to the side, put them temporary tracks in, get a 25-mile-an-hour slow water on there and run them. I can just hear it.
Oh, yeah.
Get that shit going. Got to get it going. I mean, I can just hear it. Well, I want CSX come in here and pick it up. I can just hear it. Bunch of freaking assholes is what they are. They don't care. I don't see any of them picking up and moving East Palestine. But you're okay to live there. But they can't live there, but you're okay to live there. Pay somebody $1 million to go snap photos of kids playing on a playground to put on some company propaganda that gets sent to the government that says, hey, look what we're doing for East Palestine. Are you kidding me?
Vent and burn.
The final yes was given by me based on the consensus of everybody in the unified command that there was no other option. No objections were given to that during that meeting, or no other options were given at that point. So as a consensus of the meeting, it was the final okay was given by me as the incident commander based on the consensus of the unified command.
And how much time were you given to make the decision to approve the vent and burn?
When we got taken down to that room, we were told we had 13 minutes to make the decision. And that had to do with convergence with the weather and the transitioning from day to night and the product, and it's believed to be what state it was in and the process it was going through.
Hey y'all. So Pride
Oh
Month is
my
here and it's
God.
time for parades, rainbow t-shirts in department stores, and legislative.
He's really got an ad like every 36 seconds.
Yes, that is
It
creating
might just be where you're
ad.
clicking to, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
as far as the timestamps, but man, there's a lot.
Yeah, there's only a couple more
That
links
nice
here.
big super chats are welcome sign. I was like,
Good God. Yeah, I'm not monetized, y'all. Super chat over there on Sleuth Mom's channel. Please go support that channel over there. But yeah, like Jordan, knock it off with the ads, yo.
I will accept $1 million in a house.
Yeah,
But I
she
won't
will.
sell my soul for it.
That's right. This is an interesting graph. So this is gonna show the temperatures that they were checking allegedly. And so the decision to vent and burn was made when these cars reached around between 135 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And then they checked again later, and the temperature was going down. It was closer to 135, and then it kind of leveled out there a little bit, and then it dropped down to 130, then it leveled out, and then it spiked again, allegedly, up to almost 140. Then it spiked, it went all the way back down below 130 degrees. There's no data for several hours. And then it's all the way down to 125 degrees. So they made the decision to do a vent and burn. So you heard him say he had 13 minutes to make the decision. But the truth is, they were trending these cars. They were one car, not five, one. The one car that was by itself in position 53 or 55, not the four cars that were grouped together, but the one. So they spent, so in the beginning, it was like 13 minutes. I had 13 minutes. Later, he goes on, they talk about how they checked the temperature of this car all night long. So these are the readings all night long. He must have took a nap here. So the decision was made when the one car temperature was at almost 140 degrees Fahrenheit. But they actually did the vent and burn when the cars were closer to 125 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes no sense.
Yeah,
Makes
at
no
that point,
sense
it
at all.
looks like it was like stabilizing. That's why I said, like, it
Yeah.
sounds like to me that they wanted to clear the tracks faster.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
just burn it, get it off the road, and move it out of the way.
Yeah, they're like, let's just run it.
I don't
Let's
want to
just
wait
run
for
it.
specialized equipment to be able to unload all those chemicals and to clean it up and get it out of there. So this seemed like the right idea, and then it was like, oh crap, hey, that stuff's deadly.
Yeah. Yeah. And no care, like just oh my God. No concern for all these chemicals that are all over the place. And now let's set them on fire and put them up into the air. I mean, it's
You know what though too? They were probably thinking like this is middle to low class America. Nobody's gonna care. We'll just pollute their entire town, brush it under a rug, and nobody will care.
oh, I'm
And
sure of it.
for the most part, they were right, except for the fact that Aaron Brockovich and people were following this. I mean, they're still making noise. They're going to continue to still make noise. And it
Absolutely.
might be just small audiences watching us, but it does make a big difference eventually.
Absolutely. Here's some pictures I'm putting up that show some substances leaking out of a boxcar here. And this one was pretty telling. This was before the vent and burn. This was the morning after the derailment, before the vent and burn. You can already see the chemicals that have pooled and gathered, on the ground. There was snow and ice, and the chemicals melted that. And I mean, you can see the chemicals just sitting there, just like, there's no protection whatsoever. Nobody doing anything, and us is in complete control. And it's disgusting. This next part, this guy that's about to talk, he's actually from vinyl chloride company. He's actually the owner of the chemicals, the vinyl chloride that was in the cars. So he's from the company that loaded those cars. So he's going to explain that they actually said, no, don't burn them. There's no reason to vent and burn. It should have never been done. And so if you're not sitting down, sit down. You ready, Lefty? Because it's going to piss you off.
Oh, yeah.
environment, safety, and security for oxyvinyls. With me today is Steve Smith. He's a technical manager at our manufacturing facility in LaPorte, Texas. I first want to acknowledge the East Palestine community and those who participated in the response effort following the derailment of Norfolk Southern Train 32N in February of this year. We recognize the impact the derailment has had on your community, and we'd like to thank Chief Drabick and all of the first responders for their service. We look forward to addressing questions from the panel to the best of our ability. As a shipper that relies on railroads to safely transport our products, Oxyvinyl shares the agency's goal of investigating transportation incidents and taking steps to prevent a recurrence. In my opening comments, I would like to provide context regarding our involvement in the incident and summarize the technical support we provided to those handling the response. We were one of multiple shippers that had rail cars on train 32N. Specifically, 5 cars with our stabilized vinyl chloride monomer, or VCM, were on the train. The rail cars carrying Oxyvinyl's product did not initiate the derailment. Another car has been preliminarily identified as initiating the derailment when it suffered a wheel bearing failure. The cars carrying our product derailed because of that failure. 5 other companies had a combined total of 6 tank cars involved in the derailment that contained hazardous materials. Many of these rail cars breached upon derailing, which released their contents into the environment and fueled the initial fires at the derailment scene. The 5 tank cars carrying Oxyvinyl's product derailed without breaching. The pressure relief device.
Did you hear that? Derailed without breaching. Without breaching. They were not leaking. The substances were not released into the environment. They were safely tucked away in the inner seal of that tank car. Let him finish.
Devices on all 5 cars operated as intended, preventing damage to the tanks by relieving the elevated pressures that were caused by the surrounding fires.
Do you remember the live stream I did showing the difference between the tank cars? That they have pressure relief devices for chemicals like this. He's saying those worked as intended.
On Saturday morning, February 4th, Oxyvinyls was notified of the train derailment that involved tank cars carrying our VCM product. Following the notification, Oxyvinyls activated its special situations team in Dallas. We sent a technical team to East Palestine, and we communicated with Norfolk Southern and its contractors regarding the properties of stabilized VCM. To my knowledge, no other shippers responded with this level of support. On Saturday evening, February 4th, representatives of Oxyvinyl spoke directly with representatives of Norfolk Southern and its emergency response contractors regarding conditions at the derailment site. We made it clear, based on our expertise of the chemical properties of our product, that stabilized VCM would be unlikely to spontaneously polymerize under the conditions described to us by Norfolk Southern and its contractor. Polymerization of VCM is a very exothermic reaction, which generates significant heat, resulting in increased pressure within its container. If that pressure is not relieved, it can cause a failure of the container. An uncontrolled VCM polymerization reaction would have an obvious temperature rise that would continue through the duration of the exothermic reaction. For this reason, we emphasize with Norfolk Southern and its contractors the importance of monitoring the temperature of the rail cars. And on Sunday morning, February 5th, we further reinforced our view that polymerization was not occurring during a call with Norfolk Southern representatives. As previously mentioned, Oxyvinyls had dispatched a 3-person team to Ohio in order to make certain that we had representatives on the ground who could serve as a resource to Norfolk Southern and those managing the response effort. My colleague on the panel, Steve Smith, led that team, and he arrived in East Palestine on the afternoon of Sunday, February the 5th. On Sunday evening, Steve met with Norfolk Southern's emergency response contractors and, for the 3rd time, stated Oxyvinyl's view that polymerization of VCM was not occurring. In summary, although our rail cars did not initiate the derailment and did not breach in the derailment, we provided technical support to Norfolk Southern and its emergency response contractors. We sent a team to Ohio to support Norfolk Southern's response effort, and we provided information regarding stabilized VCM.
I'm a businesswoman, not a baby woman.
Taxi! We have a boardroom full of executives waiting to hear.
What do you think about that, Lefty?
Well, apparently they wasn't supposed to. They thought they shouldn't have bent and burned from what he was talking about. But the tank cars and relief valves were working as intended.
Yep, they were not breached. There was no breach of chemical. There was no chemical spill. They weren't tipped over. The fire didn't get them hot enough to the temperature where polymerization would have taken place. There was no reason to do any vent and burn, to do anything to them. Nothing. So this town has been poisoned for no reason other than to hide the fact that the train wasn't, built correctly, in my opinion. More importantly, to open up that rail, get that freight moving.
That's what it's all about.
I don't know about you, but like that really pissed me off. Still pisses me off. To think what all of these people are going through as a result of corporate greed is absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. I'm going to drop the links in the chat, and Sleuth Mom, I'll put them in the back chat. For the full, there's 2 days. Both of the videos are about 9 hours long. There's 2 days. And please go watch them because there's so much information in these that, it blew me away. It absolutely blew me away to have all these people sitting in the same room, like, talking basically like, Norfolk Southern sucks and they're responsible for this and they don't want to do anything about it and so on and so forth. So I'm dropping 2 links for each day's videos and you'll be able to go watch those if you want to. I do have a couple of other videos that I want to show real quick here. One is the training first responders. Yeah, one more video, and then we can call her or not. And then I'll get the third day. We'll have to do the third day another day. But one of the things that they've jumped in front of and tried to do is now be your best friend, They're like, hey, but we're doing it right. We're doing good. We've got all this information. We're going to train all your first responders. This is what they should have been doing all along. So, Sleuth Mom, do you remember when we were talking about when the railroad said to the 911 dispatcher that they had a hazmat team and a fire department and everybody, the whole rescue, all the supermen were coming out to take care of everything? And I said, well, they don't have that. They don't have fire department. They have hazmat specialists, they have environmental people, and they give recommendations and they do trending and whatever. But like, no, that's crazy. They'd have to have them everywhere. And what they're supposed to do, the training, they're supposed to train fire departments to handle railroad situations like this. Well, now they're doing it.
First responders from Ohio and neighboring states are getting hands-on training to help them prepare for a train emergency following the derailment in East Palestine. Our Ray Buckley has more.
Ultimately, you don't need to know the different models. It doesn't matter. It's just who makes it.
Training is underway for an expected 400 first responders from Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia over the next 2 weeks.
That battery knife switch is located in the compartment.
The training session at Norfolk Southern's Bellevue facility as the company works to highlight its safety efforts weeks after the fiery train derailment in East Palestine on February 3rd.
Safety is first. And so what we're doing is we're working with the NTSB, we're working with the FRA, and we're working with our customers to identify what we need to learn from to make Norfolk Southern an even safer railroad coming out of East Palestine.
Among the
So he says, we're working with the NTSB board, we're working with the FRA. Well, yeah, because they're the ones that are about to come down with some punishment on your asses for being pathetic losers and poisoning an entire town. But okay, you're doing it now. You're doing it now.
Topics: identifying and understanding what's on the tank cars, like valves and different fittings, as well as what emergencies could happen on the railroad, how to respond, and how to tell what a rail car is carrying.
You usually just see the placards on the side of the rail cars, so you kind of guess what's in them.
A handful of East Palestine's firefighters at the first day of training.
If anybody has a rail running through their community, they need to take the class.
The village's deputy fire chief calling the training very helpful and informative, but says the derailment was too big of an incident for it to have made a difference.
It's a whole different situation on February 3rd. So we wouldn't have been able to do what we learned today anyhow.
Earlier today, Norfolk Southern CEO Alan.
Right. Catch that. Right.
He's like, yeah, this is a little bit too little too late and pretty much worthless if this ever happens again.
Right.
Thanks, though.
Right. Like, yeah, maybe it would have helped. Maybe not. Yeah, I'm with you. TK Tater says whoever pulled that trigger to burn that needs put under a prison. Just my opinion, so negligent. I couldn't agree more. I think there needs to be an entire corporate investigation done, and every person who's in any position of authority to have made the decisions to run trains, to silence alarms, to not notify crews of their trains. See, I'm federally licensed. If my train fails like this, it's my job to know what's going on my train. It's my job to get my ass off the locomotive and walk back and see what the hell is going on and fix it. And I can only do that when the detectors tell me that something is wrong or when my engineer tells me that something is wrong. But that's my job and I'm accountable for doing my job. I'm licensed and when you're federally licensed, you're accountable for that. If you don't do your job, you face consequences for that. We have, we hit vehicles, we hit pedestrians. I mean, crazy shit goes on the railroad. And we all know you can be questioned, you can be arrested, you can be put in federal prison for not doing your job and following your license. And so they're preventing that by silencing these detectors, by not notifying trains that they have a trending bearing or a flat spot or, help me, Lefty. There various things that are wrong, dragging equipment. I mean, anything.
Oh, you got that stress detector. It tells you if you have unlevel load, car leaning to one side or more or another. If it's got cameras, it'll tell you if you got some bolts loose on your bearings or slope. That one detector that tells everything about your train.
Yeah, if they're silencing those alarms and not telling us something is wrong, we can't stop and fix it.
No, because one incident that we had that I think it was, they come on and asked me if anybody told us about it, and we said, well, no. That's what they told us. Well, you need to bring your train to a stop and go back and check.
Yeah, another situation where either somebody silenced, the wayside detector for your train, or, there's one person manning too much mileage, too many detectors, and so somebody just randomly comes on the radio and tells them, like, "Hey, has anybody said to go check this car out?" And he's like, "Nope." They said, "Yep, bring it to a stop and go check it." I mean, that could have been another, derailment. I mean, bearings aren't to be played with. The whole point is that precision scheduled railroading did not happen in East Palestine or Ohio or Pennsylvania or West Virginia or Indiana. It happened nationally with every Class 1 railroad. So 2.5 years, in 2020, December of 2020, BNSF, I believe, was the last to take precision railroading and say, we're going to do it. There were almost all the Class 1 railroads. Today, as of right now today, every Class 1 railroad in the country operates under precision scheduled railroading. And what that means is that the train crews have been cut in half and the trains have been built longer. And so there's more responsibility. And it goes further than that. You got guys out there operating locomotives, hauling trains, chemicals, hauling food, hauling everything with no rest, aggravated, haven't spent any time at home with their family. They've missed, Lefty's son was just driven to college and set up in his dorm. And he was on a train, coming home and didn't make it home in time for that, to go with his wife for that. I mean, you miss a lot of your family, a lot of your kids' activities. It's aggravating. You work with people you don't care for. You're stuck out there in the middle of nowhere. You get to the other end of the rail. You got to carry so much shit with you, including food for the other end. It's a very stressful, very time-consuming job. On top of that, railroads, because they've cut so many jobs, you don't get sick days. You can't take vacation days when you want to. You have to request them, and you never get them off whenever, summertime, everybody goes on vacation. Rarely are you going to get those. It's happening. This East Palestine incident will happen again. Not when, not if. It will. It's going to happen, continue happening. till people get fired up about it and realize it's not about safety. What they're doing in East Palestine, silencing these people, lying, covering it up, paying off politicians, paying off the health department, paying off, anybody and everybody, medical facilities, the Mercy Health system, all of them, paying them off to not do the right testing so that the right chemicals and medical conditions are not found, so that you don't have a chance in hell of being treated for anything. This isn't their first rodeo. And so it's going to happen. If you live near a railroad track where they're using it, it's an active live railroad. It can happen in your backyard. So watch what's happening in East Palestine. And if you're not fired up about it, you will be whenever it happens to someone that you care about or in your community. And that's the whole point of showing you the lies and the cover up. The full videos are in the chat. Please go watch them and listen for yourself. Listen to the questions, listen to the answers, and listen to the contradictions.
Yep. We got to take the blinders off, guys. Like, we cannot just sit here and think that everything in our world is hunky-dory and stuff like that while corporate greed just takes over. I mean, literally, we're owned by a couple guys who own everything, and it's not okay. And they're just going to keep pulling the wool over our eyes day after day after day, and just destroying communities and everything else so that people can have a few extra dollars in their pocket. Where does that get you at the end of the day? I mean, it sucks. It really freaking sucks. But Lefty, I wanted to say thank you so much for what you do. I mean, without train conductors, without you guys that are willing to go out there and sacrifice your personal lives and God, work all these hours and stuff like that, a lot of things would stop moving. And so I appreciate you.
I appreciate it. We do what we can.
Oh, you just made his head big.
Oh no.
He gonna come home and be like, Sleuth Mom said thank you. Shut up. Bro ho, come on now.
Yeah, I got
be
you.
like, she said thank you. I did a good job.
I try.
He does. He is, I have to brag a little bit as my brother here. He's never missed a day of work. He's never left sick. He's never called out sick. He's always showed up. How many years now, Lefty? 26?
25 and a half.
25 and a half.
Yeah.
25 and a half years. Never, ever, ever, ever been sick. Never called out sick. Never had to call and say, hey, I can't make it in today. He's answered every call and he showed up every single time. He's the only person on the entire Norfolk Southern Railroad that has
Well, heck,
never.
they need to give you some of that $90 million bonus.
That's what I'm talking about. Hit up Broho. You know what I'm saying?
There we go.
Yeah, the thank you. This is how much they love their employees. The thank you that he got was whenever his daughter went into labor and had her first baby, his first grandchild. He wasn't there for that. He was on a train. When his son was going to college, which just happened within the last, handful of days, he was on a train. He didn't get to go for that. So you can put in your request for days, but you don't get them. I mean, how many Thanksgivings have you spent on a train or at the other end of the rail?
A lot.
Exactly.
Not my whole career.
Exactly. I remember how many Cody's races. I've said this before. I'm not making this about grief, but I realized how demanding the job was when I was standing next to Cody's casket and watching the video slideshow of memories, and those that I wasn't a part of or that I didn't have. That's when the guilt hit me. Like, this job is so demanding. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, single parent family, you have to work. And it took that to get him to the pro level, where he was at. But at the same point, there's a lot that I missed. And it's not because we don't have the ability to call in. We should have the ability to use our vacation days and our personal days that we're given based on our seniority. But we can't, because the demand is greater than the number of days that somebody can have off. And so whenever you put that request in.
And it can't be, though. Like, that's where I have the issue with that, because if you're able to get rid of 3,000 employees, and you're able to cut your workforce by 25% or whatever it is that they did.
33.
Like, I'm sorry, but why can't your people take vacation days then?
That's right.
Obviously, you needed those people so that you could cover vacations,
That's
so that
right.
you could cover time off.
That's right. You put your request in, and then you get an email back that says something like, "We have we have 7 people off that day, and we won't meet the demands of the
It just
company."
so happens that I also have explosive diarrhea then. Sorry about that,
Right.
I won't be here.
Right. Yeah.
How about
Yeah,
that?
it's crazy insane. I miss it. There's part of me that misses it, you know? I do. I miss the traveling and the being outside and, you know, the physical, the sweat and, you know, the aggravation sometimes. There's, you know, some of the coworkers that I miss being stuck on trains with, but I can't say that my eyes haven't been opened to how absolutely disgusting the company is, you know, with the games that they play, with, you know, not being accountable for their own mistakes. I mean, you know, I had 20 as of this year, 21 years with them. Um, I've never had an injury, never, you know, my mouth gets me. I mean, you know, you gotta be
Mhm.
pretty type A and let them know how it is sometimes, but, not until they, you know, they come for me, follow me around kind of thing. It's like, "What the fuck's your problem? Get away from me," you know, that kind of thing. Like, supervisors always like, you know, I'm 5 foot tall, I weigh 100 pounds. So, of course, you know, they're looking for the weak person, and it takes letting them know, "I'm not gonna put up with your shit," for them to realize, like, she's pretty much gonna tell you how it is. But, you know, I didn't expect lawsuits and, you know, anything like that. I thought, you know, they're gonna get me back to normal and I'll get back to work. Nope, that's not the case. So,
Mhm.
East Palestine, now they're dealing with the medical portion, and that's when I got fired up about it. I know the game that they play with trying to get medical
Right.
care. I still have 3 traumatic aneurysms in my head that cause me migraines, blurry vision, dizziness, confusion, you know, bouts of confusion random for whatever reason. You know, there's nights I don't sleep at night because I'm just kinda laying here wide awake. You know, my emotions are kind of all over the place. I'm trying to get pre-approvals from the company that did this to me. And, East Palestine, we're talking about people that didn't even work for the company. You know what I mean? These people were in
Mhm.
their homes sleeping when a train crashes and explodes and poisons. So it's like, you know, it doesn't matter if you work for them, if you don't work for them. They're just the fucking devil. That's where it's at.
Yeah. For sure.
But hey, I'm still gonna keep you up to date on all this stuff.
Oh,
I'm gonna
yeah.
let you know what's going on.
Absolutely, and whenever you're ready to do the next stream, like, I'm all for it. I mean, as many people as we can share this to. I know, you know, between the 2 of us, I think there was, like, maybe 22, 25 people, but I
Mhm.
will get replays. I'm sure you'll get
Mhm.
replays, and hopefully we can get more people to see this stuff because it's so important.
Yeah, I was looking and, it was like within the hour that we went live, there was a couple of pretty big channels that went live minutes before we did, so I kinda figured
Yeah.
that that would happen, but, you know, we
True.
don't not over here screaming and cussing each other out and acting a fool, showing our asses, so, you know, majority of the people are here for drama and crazy
You can
stuff.
do that if you want.
I mean, I can, you know what I
I
mean?
know you can.
I can do it if I want to. No. It's gotta be about more than that. It's gotta be about making a difference and, doing the right thing. I mean, I can do that, but, you know, right now, East Palestine's a lot more
Unless
important.
y'all wanna send me $1,000,000 in a house, I
I
mean
mean, you can do that too. Hit up our Cash App. Hit that Cash App. I went on Jenny's panel last
Oh,
night,
man.
farting around, getting a little cry, talking about some ugliness, some ugly people, and, yeah, it was quite funny. Like, I don't have to do streams raging mad, but for some reason, if you wanna build a channel, that's all you gotta do. Start fighting with
Heck
people.
yeah. I've seen you get some of I mean, heck, I've seen a couple hundred at least in here watching you cuss some people out before.
Yeah, there was a scammer that tried to, you know, use real life situations to her
Ah,
benefit,
jeez.
and I thought, I kept my mouth shut for a long time, and then whatever, it just kept going and going and going. I thought, "All right, bitch. All right. I'll come out and play for a little bit." But I'm not one of those people that's gonna live doing that. I'm not one of those back and forth people.
Right.
I don't care what people think, to be honest with you. I really don't. They're like,
Right.
"She's crazy. She's unhinged." I mean, okay.
Heck yeah.
All right.
I
So
actually
be it.
am. You're right.
Right.
Correct.
You're probably
Yeah.
safer staying away.
At least you're not fake.
That's
You're
right.
not two-faced.
I mean, Lefty
You
can
know,
tell
it's
you. I worked with
live and filtered and unfiltered.
absolutely. I worked with men, train masters, and it was like he can tell you, he can vouch for me. Every new train master that showed up, they would come look for me. I was one female that worked with thousands of men. So it was like easy target. You know what I mean? So they come look for me and they'd rules check me and follow me around and question me about everything and sit in their car and stare and all the crap. And I just got tired of it. And, they'd get up on the engine. I'd be like, what do you want? Get off my train. We got to go. We got shit to do. And it was almost like being a target, like when you're the one female or the one, anything, like the one male working with all female, whatever it is. But I learned then, I don't care what people think. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they talk about. But if you get up in my space, you climb up on my engine and you start getting all up in it, I'm coming back. I'm coming out. I'm coming at you. And
Right.
it took a long time, but they learned, didn't they, Lefty?
Yeah, it's not like you can disguise your voice.
Right. Yeah, I don't try. I didn't try.
Well, I mean,
They learned to leave me alone. Just the new guys would show up and, where's Stephanie at? I'll go
they
rules check
learn quick.
first. Yeah, they did. Yep. But I'll be here for East Palestine. I'll bring the truth out to them. And I know Aaron's working on some stuff. And like I said, listen, if you are affected by this, catch us on the replay and you're affected directly, somebody that's affected directly, contact Sleuth Mom or me via email, and we will send you the names of attorneys that are already working on this. They've already got people from the area that are sick. Their children are sick. Their properties are destroyed. Their finances are in shambles, and they're FELA attorneys. Look up the FELA laws, Federal Employment Liability Act. It's for Class 1 railroads, and they're already in place. They're just waiting on you to call. They're getting people medical help. There's corporate attorneys that Aaron has. So contact Sleuth Mom. Contact me by email. Either one of us will be able to get that information to you and get your name on the list. Get your story to the attorneys. Please make sure that you don't sit silent. Don't let corporate greed get away with it. Don't let it happen.
And there you go. Both of our bots just dropped our emails. So
perfect.
My chat and your chat, they are both there. I'm actually going to copy and paste yours into mine.
Yeah, and you'll
vice
find all
versa.
of the videos links below in the description, as well as Sleuth Mom's channel link and her membership link. Make sure you go over there, click that membership link. Listen, if you have memberships and you don't have a membership to Sleuth Mom's channel, you're an ass. Go get a membership to Sleuth Mom's channel. Go do it. Support the good channels to help weed out the bad channels. How about that? How about let's get rid of these bad channels and support the good channels? If you're going to support a channel, support the good one. Sleuth Mom is the best one out there. So go over there and hit that membership link. In the meantime, thank you, Lefty, so much for helping out tonight.
Well, glad I could be here.
Yeah, you always are. You're always there for me. He's the best brother in the world, y'all. And he's married with kids and a grandbaby. So there's that too.
Oh, yeah. That's why I work all the time.
No, it's because you love it, right? You love it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it greatly. Sleuth Mom, always great paneling with you. I love it. I appreciate it very much. You have a great group over there, always doing stuff. I'm gonna share out the live that you did earlier because that sounds pretty interesting. I can't wait to see kind of what happens with all of that stuff.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Crazy,
There's
crazy.
So much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you guys.
Absolutely.
It is bedtime. Let's go to
Me
sleep.
too. All right,
Good
thanks,
night,
everybody.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Right.
Bye. Good night, everybody.